Hello everybody from the Startup Gaming event, and we are going to talk about how to design your game so that it hits your target audience. So the problem is that there are more and more games today on the market, and we're going to talk about how to get the word. So my name is Lene, and I studied media design at Tartu Art University, and I'm a local community manager and a game developer, and I don't program at all, so I have other people to do that.
And that's where I come in. My name is Oit. I come from a technical background in computer systems and engineering, which practically meant physics. It was horrible, but it gave me a very good base into game development because there's a lot of maths and physics when you're developing games. I've worked in AAA titles before, into bigger indie titles, and into a fully fledged co-owned indie company right now. And right now we are living in Spelkollektivet. We're both full-time indie game developers. We're originally from Estonia, but we haven't traveled far. And check out Spelkollektivet. It's a co-living and co-working space in Sweden. It's cheap. It's close to Estonia, and it has everything you need to become to live out your game development dreams.
And so we were working on a game called Death and Taxes, and it did very good on the digital markets. So we are going to talk about some tips that we learned and that we used to get there by ourselves. So yeah, first the importance of designing to target audience, how to talk about your game, how to catch an eye on a digital market, and how to gain visibility with no budget at all.
Yeah. And I'm gonna quickly talk about what it means to design a game for your target audience. So first we would need to define what a target audience is. So basically this would be a group of people, an abstraction of what kind of people would enjoy your game. What lifestyle do they have? What gaming preferences do they have? How old they are? What's their gender? What's their location in the world, etc. So first, to design your game for your target audience, you need to figure out what your target audience is. So I'm not going to explain it any further, but just keep in mind that we're going to use this word or this phrase a lot. So when you are making a game for your target audience, you need to figure out what kind of choices and what sort of player agency are you going to give them in your game. What are they doing in the game, and how is it supposed to make them react and feel? And it's very important to think about how it's going to fit your target audience. So if you are making a competitive, high-paced strategy game or a first-person shooter game, then obviously you should be banking on the action and the competition and not necessarily on having it slow and fun, although that might work as well. So every time you are making a feature or designing a feature in your game, you need to think about how your target audience can react to it, and of course use every opportunity possible to you to test it out on them, for example, with a prototype. And by player agency, what I mean is how much freedom does the player have in your game? What are the choices they are allowed to do? There are very, very many examples of this all over in the game industry, and some games have a high level of agency, which means they have a lot of freedom in their choices. That the opposite end of the spectrum with the high level would be immersive sims, where it's like you have complete freedom what to do. And on the lower end, you would have stuff such as visual novels. And then there's everything in between. For example, there's a game coming out soon called Boyfriend Dungeon, which is basically a hack and slash crawler put together with a visual novel, where you don't have much agency in the hack and slash part. You basically just go into a dungeon, grab loot, but you get to choose what you date, or who you date rather, because your weapon is also your boyfriend, essentially. The second example would be What the Golf, which is also an indie game, and it's coming out on PC soon, but I think it's already on mobiles. There's not a lot of agency there at all. There's not much player choice in how to influence what's happening in the world, other than you're given an obstacle course and you need to get an object into a golf putting hole, essentially. And you can, it's a sandbox in a way that you can try and see how to get the object there by hitting it with a golf club, basically. And then thirdly, we have Death and Taxes, where you can choose which kind of Grim Reaper you play and what kind of moral choices you do while playing out this role. Then when you are designing your game, there's a lot of talk about USPs, which is unique selling point. It's something that gets talked about in a little bit of a wrong context now and then. It basically doesn't really mean about, it doesn't mean that your game is supposed to be completely unique. It means that the game is being made with something unique, being kept in mind, and that uniqueness can, for example, be your team. Your team has a unique set of skills that allows them to build a game that only they can build. So basically, when you're figuring out what your uniqueness of the game should be, focus on what you're good at, what you can excel at, and where you can push the boundaries. Like, you can try and make something completely new, and that's really cool and all, but if you don't have like $10 million in the bank, then that's going to be a rough ride, because making up completely new things that have never been done before is extremely resource heavy.
Yeah, and when you have thought about what the game should be about and how to design it for the market, then you have to learn about how to talk about the game. So people have to learn about your game. You have the target group, but then you have to just go ahead and try to talk about it. So for example, our game Death and Taxes, at first when I went to different gaming events and different like websites to talk about it, I was talking a really long story about what this game is about, and each time I talked about it, I narrowed it down for shorter and shorter descriptions, and it's super useful thing to do because you could say a lot. Sometimes it's good to say your genre, like 2D indie narrative-driven game, but usually it's even better when you don't do that, but say about the unique selling point, and also tell about the like story, for example, if you have one. So for us, it's you are the Grim Reaper on an office job. It kind of tells everything about the game that you need to know right ahead. Or you could even make it shorter and say like a Grim Reaper office simulation. And learning how to talk about it, it's very good to like sell, like send emails or sell it on your like storefront, or go to a gaming event and talk about your game, and people will get interested right away because they get a picture of it. Even better is when you compare it to other games as well, because it's like a picture. If they know already the other game, then something they might even visualize it when you say it's like Papers, Please, but with Grim Reaper. Even if it's not completely true, then it's something they could compare to and something they will feel that's familiar to them. Also, like Grim Reaper is familiar character from different places. So if you use familiar things in your really, really short description, they might feel that they understand it. And the next thing is the visual design. So if you can talk about it, you should also be able to show things about it. It's super important to have a very strong branding, not only for a company, but also for the game itself. So everybody knows that you should like have beautiful visuals in your game, and it should look cool. but you should use the same visuals and the same style in everything that you do. So when you choose your own color palette, fonts, and visual style, then you should use it also in marketing material. For example, like here in Death and Taxes, we can see there's a homepage, there's a virtual booth, there's some marketing material, achievements, and social media pages and storefronts. And all of it looks really similar because of the art style and the color chosen and everything. And it's super useful to do it. Just for a contrast, I took another really cool game that's really well designed. It's the Hot Awful Boyfriend, and it's a game about dating pigeons. And every picture you see of this game, you can see just realistic pigeons, photos of them, and you can see a lot of yellow, a lot of purple, and a lot of pink, and you always know that, oh, this is about this game. So even if you're scrolling to Twitter, then you will, oh yeah, I know this game, there's pigeons and it's all pink. So it's kind of I recognize it, and I will remember the game because of it. So there's also the shelf impact thing. Shelf impact is a thing, term used in product design. So if you put something on a shelf, like a milk carton, then it has to be different from other milks on the market. So basically the same thing is with games. You have similar like shelves on digital storefronts, and you have to be recognizable, and also people have to see your logos and everything. So colors work a lot. So you have to do a market research and look at what games look like, how's like the new games that look like. Do they have a lot of like gradient, or are they very difficult, or all of that. So basically I think from this list, Craftopia has done a really good job. Ori has done quite a good job as well. And Death and Taxes is kind of visible because there's not red in the games. And also look at the storefront colors as well. Like if you're going on Switch, if you're going on Steam, look at what the colors are and if they are popping. If your colors are working with the colors that are in the storefronts, and it's super useful for that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and finally, gonna give you a brief rundown on how you can get eyes on your game without actually having a budget. So for Death and Taxes, we're very fortunate to have a lot of YouTubers play the game. Like this is something that a lot of indie developers wish that would happen, and we wished for that as well, but we did more than just wishing. We worked our asses off for it. We had about 8 months of marketing in total to get to where we were, to get the coverage that we had, and we were very lucky to have it. But that being considered, we still put a lot of effort into the game being streamable in the first place. So for us, streamers and influencers generally were already part of the target audience, and we designed the game including features in the game, explicit features made for streamers, like pretty much to nail that part of the target audience, and it kind of worked out. So what can you do to find eyes on your game? Your first most important tool would be your network of people, your close contacts. So that would be most of the time other people making games, your friends, family, your fandoms that you are part of. Then secondly, your social media networks, Facebook, I would say, yeah, Twitter, Discord communities, and also your blogs, vlogs, and storefronts go under social media as well. You can engage people while being on the storefront quite effectively. Example, if you have an early access game, then your storefront is probably going to be your main community hub. Then thirdly, your community separately, having a very tight fan community, basically just a loyal fan base, is going to amplify your reach a a lot. Find people who are visiting communities where your target audience lives. Try to make appearances there, try to engage people there, bring them together so that you have and again a better, stronger network to work with, and eventually you will start getting like really enthusiastic fans and your own community figureheads who are going to start working with you to get the game to more people who like it. Then fourth is the influencers, obviously. You can you can try to aim for the stars and try to get as many like star YouTubers to get to play your game as possible, but that takes time. That's really hard work. You should rather try to start at a grassroots level, include streamers who are only starting out or who have moderate viewerships, people you can actually engage with and have a dialogue with on social media, on YouTube or Twitter, and include them in your like extended family, so to speak. And then finally, the one that might have the like best worst impact is the gaming media. So that means journalists, people who reporters, people who cover games generally, who critique, who make commentary like industry or social commentary about games. These are also people you can reach out to and talk about games. So like going on a podcast, for example, that's going to get you some eyes too. Essentially, you can also get people on board with a demo, but that's what we did with Death and Taxes, but there's a big but. It might not be the right fit for your game, because to have a demo actually impact the game, the players, again, it depends on your target audience and what they want. With a demo, you want to give them a tease of what the game could be and leave them wanting for more. If you feel like you can't really do that with your game, then it might be better to not give the opportunity to play the demo and just try and woo the players to come to your community in other ways. So essentially, you need to first figure out what you want and what you need. So let me just quickly go through this list. You need to know what you want to make. You need to be able to know what you can give to your audience. You need to figure out who your audience is, figure out what you cannot do, and then, of course, shoot for the stars, but still be realistic, and make something unique that only you could do. Use your heritage, your own personal history, your skills, etc. Leverage these to make the game only you could make. And of course, find opportunities to collaborate with other people as much as possible, because that way your ideas will get refined and you will have a better game.
And it's super important to do that and know all of that in the early stages
as
of
early
game
as possible
development. So you will use all of these tools that we talked about very early, so you design the game right away with all of this in mind.
Exactly. And that's it. Thank you for your attention. And
yeah, you
if
can
there
find
are questions,
us. You can find us on Twitter. You
Yeah.
can ask questions, and get Death and Taxes. It's on Switch now. Yeah.
yes. And don't let your dreams be dreams.
Yes. Why did Ott quit the AA titles and started doing this small time thing?
To answer that question, I moved away from the big budget production industries because I wanted to be part in a team which had more strict and tight of a creative vision, and less about appeasing the target audience and more about engaging the target audience. Big productions usually are very much geared towards mass appeal, and I would rather like to appeal very hard to a smaller audience than just a little to a wider audience.
I have one more question. You studied physics, but how did you end up doing games for, I don't know, AA big companies?
So when I was young, I got involved with this little company called Ubisoft back in 2005. And I started doing some beta testing for their games for a franchise they had just acquired at the time, for the Might and Magic franchise. So it ended up being a decade-long collaboration on the brand. And basically that also opened me up to job offers right after I graduated. So what happened was that I was so deep into the franchise already that I knew the people who were making the next Heroes of Might and Magic game, that was Heroes of Might and Magic 7. So once I actually graduated, I just threw an email to the studio that was making it, and I was already like engaged with them in this consultancy and offered myself up as a programmer, showing that, hey, I have a computer science degree and I'm pretty good at maths, so give me a job, please. And that was that.
Thank you.
Next question. Safety measures.
Lene, what's your next game?
Oh, right now we're making a update for Death and Taxes because we really love working on this game and we want to give more back to the fans as well. But we have a lot of new ideas, some bigger, some smaller. Most probably we will next work on a crafting game where you are a crafting merchant and there is a real crafting system, like a realistic one, that hasn't been done before in any of the games.
How big is the team for Death and Taxes? And is this your first endeavor in the current form or not?
Yes, it is our first work. Me and Oak are working together on it. And there are also 6 more people in the team, I guess.
Yeah, there's 6
5,
more
6
people who are like a core part of the team.
Yes.
And then we have 3 main voice actors. And then with the new update, we will likely have up to 7 new voice actors as well. So yeah, core team is 8 people. Voice acting team is like double that.
Yeah, and we would like to continue on that because we have a really good composer and lead writer and really good artist on the team. So yeah.
So you have already looked at Steam and Switch, but I'm wondering, have you looked towards the Game Pass being offered by Microsoft? His question is, for an indie developer like you, what kind of an impact would Game Pass do? Because you said for a game like yours, you don't want a demo because that may like turn people off, but putting your game on a Game Pass essentially works as a demo for people. Plus, it also brings you in revenue. So I'm wondering, is putting up your game on a Game Pass or some similar subscription service kind of a net loss for you or a net gain? Because I've seen recent indie games launch day one on Game Pass, and I'm, like as a gamer myself, I appreciate the thing that instead of buying an indie game, I can go and try it, and then if I like it, I can buy it.
Yeah, good question. Actually, we have thought about several of these subscription-based services, but we also kind of made a silent agreement amongst ourselves that we're not going to do that before the year 1 mark. Mm-hmm. So we'll look at it next year, basically once there's been a year of Death and Taxes already being out on Steam, itch.io, GameJolt, yeah, and then a little bit of Switch.
When the sales have been like calming down more.
Yeah.
And we also did have a playable demo from day 1 and even before that. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, for our game, the demo actually worked super well. Like even unexpectedly
Mhm.
well. So we're actually happy that we took that step. But we are careful when recommending this to others because, yeah, it's a hit and miss unless you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And we have time for one last question. Oh, then it will be mine. So, guys, what inspired you to create Death and Taxes?
Well, a lot of different things. I have always liked the Grim Reaper character, and I have always liked when media talks about death because Western society usually hushes the topic a lot, and games only have death in it with like just mindless killing, shooting characters. And we wanted to have more consequences and also a funny way to talk about death as well, more safe space to think about issues and topics that are basically about death.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Thanks for joining us today and for your wonderful presentation. Keep up the great work and
Thank you.
have a great time in Sweden.